sometimes it's all the time. So it can be helpful that way. Oh. Okay, so let's recite the four measurables so we can refresh this idea of wanting to keep in mind others, wanting to benefit them. You know, and the wonderful thing is that when we think of benefiting all sentient beings, we're included, so we're not leaving ourselves out. It's just we want to recognize that we are part of a vast network of sentient beings who all wish the same thing we wish for. They have the same kind of desires and needs and want freedom from suffering, want peace of mind, peace of body. And we're kind of all in the same boat in that we don't know what we're doing in order to achieve it. So. I really kind of think that you're just surrounded, because you are. This is what's so interesting. We are surrounded by all the living beings of the universe. And we're really genuinely wishing this for all these living beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. And may all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. So welcome, everyone. I wish I could just hug everybody. So anyway, so the last couple of weeks, we've been looking at how perspective, that our mental attitude of perspective can help us not get so caught in the moments of suffering and perhaps be more aware when there's the moments, when there are moments of ease or joy that are present, or opportunities for them to be present. And how stepping back from that, from our very narrow picture of what's happening to us right now, or what we are afraid of happening in the future, and we're basing that, of course, on all the fears from our past, but how if we step back and realize, oh, we're just one being amongst countless beings, and we all have our difficulties. And recognizing that we have good conditions, better than most beings on this planet. And so we want to have that support us. It's like that peaceful place underneath the surface of the lake that just, okay, I have some things that will help me, whatever this difficult time is. I have others I can rely on. There are many ways to have the change in perspective, give us that sense that what's happening in this moment is not so important. that we have a lot of moments, and some moments are pleasant and some moments are not so much. No. So being able to step back a little distance, a little less grasping at the self, thinking, oh, but I'm so important. I need this. I want this. I'm in pain. Like, I'm in pain, you know, like my air conditioner broke Friday night. And everybody pretty much knows how much I love the heat. So, I have ice packs in my lap. But so being able to step back and go, no big deal. I mean, when I was little, you know, let's not mention the rest of the world, but when I was little, I went to school that wasn't air conditioned, you know. So it's, you know, a suffering of privilege having the air conditioned work. So anyway, but I have ice packs. At least it's not a hurricane where I just don't have power. So I don't even have ice packs. You know, so this is the way we can use perspective to kind of step back and recognize the good stuff we have and how silly our minds can get, you know, where we kind of go, oh, I'm not going to be able to handle this. You know, I have to wait till Monday. You know, so it's just, you know, which is absurd. You know? And of course, you know, I could call up one of you saying, please, I need a break. You know, take me in, feel for me. You know, or I can jump in my car and waste gas. So, but I have cold water. I have ice packs. Look who's here.
Hi.
Hi.
It's the con.
Venerable Tendron.
How are you?
It's good to see you.
It's wonderful to see you.
It's great to see you guys.
Yes, thank God.
This is the advantage of Zoom.
Yeah.
Right. It took us a while to get on, but we had to make
I
it.
had to see
My
you.
grandson did it.
Yeah. My
Oh,
children.
yes. See, we can rely on others.
We have to. Yeah.
So,
Okay, wonderful. Everything's fine.
good.
Stay
Good. Glad
focused.
you're healthy and well.
Yes, we are.
Healthy mind, healthy
Say
body.
hello to everybody
Give my
there,
love.
You're doing that.
God bless you.
Yay.
Yay.
especially Nicole.
Yeah. She's an angel.
So today, which might not be as exciting as perspective, I thought we could talk about humility. Does everybody love humility? So I asked you to think about humility. What do you think of when you think about humility? What does it mean to you? Did anybody think about it? I'm going to look it up.
I think equanimity.
Equanimity?
Yeah.
Here's an interesting definition. A modest or low view of one's own importance.
I was just going to suggest, in our terms, it's no self.
It could be looked at that way, but it's really in context with others, isn't it? You know, it's a recognition of ourselves within a context of, you know, not being alone. It's a relationship quality. My relationship with the universe, you know, relationship with others, relationship with our, here's another definition, freedom from pride or arrogance. Oh, I love that. Synonyms. This is demureness. Anybody read a Victorian novel lately? Demureness. Down to earthness. Meekness, modesty, lowliness. Okay, so this is one of the 8 qualities that His Holiness said are important for joy. It's a pillar of joy. Anybody have an idea about how it might be a supportive state of mind for joy?
Well, it reminds me of the 8 verses of mind training,
Yeah.
and that the practice of putting others actually before yourself helps to diminish the selfish attitude, which is the root of all of our suffering.
Well, ignorance is the root of all of our suffering. And
Yes.
from that ignorance, self-cherishing is the first thing that arises. So, it's, so it's really, yes, it's so what Anthony's referring to is the first verse of the 8 verses on mind training is, may I see myself, or maybe that's a different one, see myself lower than everybody else, it's the others is like a wish fulfilling jewel or something. See, I've memorized it. So, does anybody have trouble with humility? Is it a word that's kind of like, ugh? Are y'all all okay with it? No. Does it seem to fit in our culture?
Well, I think it depends on where you look. Traffic is always used as a metaphor, it seems, or quite often is, and it's always spoken of. Oh, that person cut me off, but I find that just as often people let me in. So it's perspective too, right? We're going to talk societally. I mean, you always say, oh, there's always bad news. Well, that's because it's unique. There's lots of good news, right? So,
yes, that's right. It's not news that good things happen. They
right,
like to
so
report what bad things happen. So
that's right. So when you talk about humility at a societal level, at least in our society, again, I think it's perspective, right?
yes, and the perspective that humility is bringing into focus is what? What is it? What is it acknowledging?
Tolerance.
In what way?
Well, you have more patience and you are more humble to other people's experiences.
Okay. Peggy, you had your hand raised?
I think it depends on who you hang out with, who your friends are, how you recognize humility as a group. Like you can't necessarily choose your family, but you can choose your friends. And if you hang with that type of friend, like the Sangha, you're going to probably find it more so. Also, I think that to recognize the suffering of others brings on a greater sense of humility and awareness.
Does anybody remember oh, who was it? There's a woman who was on one of those, like, England Has Talent or something. And Simon Caldwell was one of the judges. And when she came out, his face was really like, oh my God, what have they brought here? Who allowed this person on the stage? You know, just like a frumpy housewife or something. You know, he had a really negative thing. And then as she started to sing, his face just completely changed from this, you know, cynical kind of face to one of awe. You know, and that awe was accompanied with joy. So there can be a quality of humility that recognizes being in the presence of something beautiful or amazing. You know? So there's a humility about, you know, the miracles of existence. You know, like all the people, like for me, I can't carry a tune. Everybody who can sing, it's just wow to me. So when I listen to choirs or, you know, just how people can just start belting out songs, you know, like right now on the Zoom thing, there are all sorts of people who are, you know, belting out songs or playing musical instruments or all this kind of thing. And I can't do any of that, you know, and it is just wonderful to be in the presence of that. You know, the sense that, you know, it's, you know, and then just, you know, there's also this sense of how that doesn't diminish me. Not being able to do something that someone else can do does not have to mean that we're diminished. But when we have pride, that can often be our response, is that we're kind of, you know, we find a way to pick fault. Because our self-image is grasping at better than. And so it closes our minds off to the opportunity to experience something that we can't be a part of or create because we don't have that ability. So it's a really good antidote to arrogance or pride or conceit, whatever word we use. But it isn't an antidote to confidence. Confidence is not afflicted. It's when we take our confidence and twist it into meaning that we're better than. And humility is a good antidote to that. So it's like, you know, one of the reasons for prostrations in this tradition, when we see teachers or they come before us to teach, or where we see representatives of the Buddha Dharma Sangha on the altar, we make 3 prostrations. And that's because at the time of the Buddha, prostrations, those physical prostrations, were a method in the society to show respect. Respect for the wisdom that the teachers had. So it's this, you know, it's, you know, so you prostrate in order to accept that they know more than you do. Which a lot of us are not too comfortable with, you know. Or we take it to the other extreme. You know, sometimes we're in that place where we're not comfortable with it because we like to think we're better than or smarter than or whatever words we use, more clever than, and then, or we're spending time in that, that other end of that continuum where we feel like the worst, So instead of humility being there, we just have aversion towards ourselves. And that's not helpful. That's not humility. That's seeing yourself as really less than, not as a practice to remember that you're trying to develop, great compassion, for all sentient beings, great love for all sentient beings. So you're going to put their needs above yours as an antidote to our self-cherishing habit, which puts ourselves above others. But if we're truly humble, yes, Ralph.
I wonder what you might think of this notion. I was reading something this morning, and the author was saying that he doesn't like the notion of serving. He thinks that it is, as you were just suggesting, to some degree putting ourselves below another. That he prefers the term being part of, right? Being. So I don't know if that conflicts or whatever.
If your ego needs that, then go for it. I mean, that's really what it's about, isn't it? Ooh, I don't like the thought of serving others.
Yeah.
So you just have to look at that. Yes, and you can reframe it because it really is that we are a part of the net of sentient beings and we're interdependent. But it's so helpful to recognize when our ego can't even stand a word to describe helping others as serving them. I mean, I get that. I totally get that. And we have some negative connotations because of words like servants. We've actually paid people to serve us, and it's all a function of wealth. It has nothing to do with being part of a community, like you're saying. But of course, we can also look at the reality that everyone's work serves the community of sentient beings. That jobs exist because somebody wants something that someone can provide. And so there are a whole different range of things and different, because of different perceived needs. But so whatever word you use, the idea is to have this equanimity, seeing ourselves and others as no different on a scale. So we have confidence in some arenas because we know that we have certain skills that we're good at. And we have humility in other arenas when we know there are others present that have more skills than we have. We don't have to flip-flop between pride and low self-esteem. So this is just nuance in the meanings of the words, recognizing, that there's an attitude that causes a state of mind, to be afflicted. Joy.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I think that in business, if I have this correctly, what you're saying, you want to have people that know more than you do to help you out also, and to respect that they know more than you. And I hate to mention this name, but I know that during 911, Rudy Giuliani said, it's not him that did everything. It was all the people around him. And I think is that part of what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, this is the idea of recognizing that we rely we have the opportunity to actually rely on all sentient beings. And the more we have a balanced sense, a balanced concept of self and others, the more we'll recognize those opportunities. And that reliance is not a bad thing. You know, reliance implies we need help. And we want to look when our mind cringes at that. Yes. Do you see where to unmute?
I know, I was confused. What do you mean by balanced sense of self and others?
Well, this equanimity, where we don't judge others by whether we like them or not like them, whether they help us or not help us, or whether they're American or not American or whatever. We just understand that we're all equal in wanting to be happy and we want to avoid suffering. And that's what motivates us. That's what the driving force. And we're just mistaken about the cause of happiness and the cause of suffering. So we misinterpret the universe and end up, you know, increasing our suffering and missing opportunities for contentment and happiness. And then even on a deeper level, in Buddhism, it's this idea that we even, the way we think of things in this dualistic manner, you know, the sort of what the idea of serving as opposed to a part of can get at, you know, a little bit, you know, but this dualistic way of seeing everything from this, you know, us and them mindset, you know, is at the root of our mistaken actions of body, speech, and mind. That we're wrong about this basis of self and other. It only appears that way, that we're separate, that somehow what we do doesn't necessarily affect anybody else, and what they do doesn't necessarily affect anybody else, unless when they're doing is we think does affect us and we don't like it. You know, so we just, it's so that we need to understand, you know, the Buddha said the way we hold things to exist is just an appearance that is mistaken. Things appear as if they inherently exist, that they have a nature that is it, so that each one of us has our own special, unique, you know, nature that is not, doesn't change. Our bodies may change. We go from being babies to adults, but we have a nature that is us, that is the essence of us. And the Buddha said, no, 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 no. Everything's constantly changing. There is no permanent self, soul. We have a continuum. Our mind, you know, according to Buddhism, the consciousness is a non-physical component of existence. And then the forms of everything is the physical components of our existence. And the mind, I don't know if you've looked at your mind lately, but you know, the mind is constantly changing. We can barely hold a thought for very long. In fact, it's kind of amusing. You know, when we're angry, we have to keep telling ourselves why we're angry. We have to rehearse it and make it, you know, for it to last. Because if we let go of thinking about it, gee, it might pass. But then we remember. We see the person that we think is the source of our anger, and then we rehearse it some more. But the mind is constantly changing. one moment of mind leads to the next moment of mind, which leads to the next moment of mind, which leads to the next moment of mind. And so what we practice becomes habitual. So if we interrupt what we're practicing, then we can change the tone of those moments of mind. So instead of rehearsing anger, perhaps we can become habituated to rehearsing rejoicing, rehearsing gratitude, rehearsing mindfulness of others, what they might need. And so humility is one of those strengths of mind that can help us do this, because its focus is not on what we bring to the moment, but what we're receiving from others. And sometimes we need that when we're all caught up in either a sense of entitlement or a sense of, that if I'm not better than everybody, that I'm nothing. Or when we're judging others because, we think we're smarter than them. Or we think I don't know what we think. We think a lot of silly things. Because we can't imagine being like they are. But qualities like humility help us remember that everybody's circumstances are different. Everybody's got entire backgrounds and lives that we're not aware of in the slightest. They have skills we might not know about. So instead of making assumptions when we walk into a room, if we get to do that anymore, about people based on their tones of voice, their gender, their clothing, the foods they like, what they find interesting to read. Instead of constantly thinking about ways in which they don't live up to our notion of a potential friend, perhaps, or colleague. But again, this gets to perspective, sort of stepping back in our minds and being open to the possibility, of wonder existing in that room, awe of something happening, or just the fact that we usually can learn something from everybody that exists. If we allow that opportunity to be there, if we don't crowd it out with our own presence. So just take a moment to think about if you've witnessed humility or felt humility, and try to imagine the scenario. What was happening, like my description of Simon Cowell singing, I can't think of her name, this woman singing. But just, bring something to mind.
Susan Boyle.
Thank you, Susan Boyle. I just delighted in that moment because it was one of these clear examples to me of awe arising in someone's face, and that it's a joyful experience. It doesn't mean that it's, that feeling humbled, having your view, you know, clearly be contradicted by reality. So, but just, you know, and being in, you know, being open to the joy that that allowed, you know. So it's, so think about that for a moment. Just think about, can you remember some incident around the subject of humility, whether it was for your, you know, within yourself, or that you felt like you were witnessing it in others? And just what were the different, you know, try to think about what the different, how did it feel? How did it feel in the body? How did it feel? What were the thoughts that were there? You know, did they contradict each other? Were there some thoughts of just awe and then other thoughts of like, you know, like fear? It can even be, you know, like connecting with a young child and seeing the wisdom in that child, the kindness in that child in that moment.
Hi.
Yes.
Oh, raise my hand. I was thinking that like we have 2 new grandbabies, and that's exactly what I was thinking. Like I used to like just think, oh, you know, now they're sitting up but you know, each little mark that they're doing is really an accomplishment for them, you know, and it's not just, oh, it's another thing they're doing. I've been looking at it more like in awe and trying to appreciate all their little incremental when they're developing, the developmental stages, you know, which is so interesting. I never took the time with my own kids in those days to appreciate the stages, and now with their grandchildren I am.
Yeah.
So I know it's from the practice as well as I'm a grandmom, it's different, but I'm enjoying that, like you said, watching.
And to think, we all started there. That's one of our similarities. You know, we all had to learn how to talk. We had to learn, you know, and it's amazing how much we do learn. This does not make us, this is not meant to give us a false sense of importance. It's about just how it is and how we're all the same this way. And according to the Buddha, since we've had past and we'll have future lives, and, you know, the conditions and the qualities and everything that we have is a result of our past actions. So we've all had beautiful voices in some lives. We've all been the brilliant fixer of things in some lives. We've all been the worst of the worst, the people that were scared to walk past, you know, even in broad daylight, which really aren't the worst of the worst, but that's what our imagination goes. You know, so it's just this, we have practiced many different things since we've existed since beginningless time. So we want to be open to that idea. And yet, the majority of human beings we really don't feel that different from. They have the same desires for their family, for their children, for their partners, for their jobs. We can rely on most people to stop at a stoplight. If you drop something, most people will help you pick it up. So we want to, this is again a way of stripping away our sense of difference, this constant sense of difference, separateness. This is a really terrible example, probably. I'm always humiliating myself. I humbly offer this. I've been reading these murder mysteries that take place in Victorian times and a little after Victorian times, this kind of, in England, or sometimes Scotland. Maybe it's just Great Britain. Anyway, and there are lots of them. This author has written a lot of them. And they're with different, never mind, none of that's important. Well, I just recently found out that she murdered the mother of her best friend with her best friend. Her and her best friend murdered her best friend's mother when she was 15. And I've been watching my mind around that. The shock. And one of the things I really like about these books is they really talk about values all over the place. It concentrates on the transformation of the mind of the detective, and about equanimity and making assumptions about people and all this stuff. But she killed someone at the age of 15. It's really an interesting experience to just kind of, okay, what do I think about that? And I was a bit relieved that I only read junk books, from the library. So, I'm not supporting her financially.
Venerable,
Yes.
there's a movie that came out years ago based on that incident. It's called Heavenly Creatures.
Right. Yes. That's
And
it.
I remember at the time thinking, wow, I don't think I'm ever going to read. I mean, my judgmental mind really went into overdrive. I was in my 20s at the time, I think. And I remember thinking I would never read any of her books because I just
Right.
can't get over this thing that she did, even though whatever sentence she received, and I think she did have to do something. I mean, she was a teenager at the time. She rehabilitated herself and she should deserve that chance. But in my mind, I just couldn't get over it.
Yeah, I get that. So it's very funny. So this is one of those things. We really want to look at how we assume that people, I wouldn't read a book and enjoy them, that are written, it's really interesting. It shows you how messy our minds are and how judgmental they are. Without any real information. I have 2 little bitty pieces of information. She changed her name, so that's why, I didn't know about it. But it's just this, and I wouldn't have known about it anyway, because I wouldn't have known her name before. But all of that aside, does anybody see the humor in this? I mean, it's just really interesting that we get a piece of information, and this is what we're doing all the time. When we look at someone's clothes, or we listen to their voice, their accent, or we look at their gender, or whatever it is, we are basing our assessment of beings on these little pieces of information. Yes, Joy. Joy? Oh, you're muted. Yeah. You're still muted. Joy, you're. Hey, there
Yeah,
we
I'm here. Now you hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm surprised that you read murder mysteries. I
Oh,
find that. So
yeah.
I made that assumption.
No, it's true.
I would never think that you would.
Yeah. I don't read about them. I don't care about.
You're reading the
care about the murderers.
Okay.
I care about what goes on in the mind of the people trying to solve the murder. So
Okay.
that's
I
my
heard you say.
piece, you know. It started when I was young. My mother and I would read Agatha Christie books every night until about 2 or 3, and she'd come in going, "Why are you still awake?" And I'd go, "Why are you still awake?" And that was my life. So that's a long habit, not a useful habit. Don't emulate this. This is a very bad
I'm not.
habit. So, but it's, you know, it's, so anyway, yes, but this is what we do, don't we? We make judgments on with no information at all. We fill in the gaps. We fill in the you know, and humility is one of the states of mind that, like perspective, that steps back and doesn't assume. That is open to the possibility of learning from someone else, to the possibility of not knowing, to the possibility that our judgments are wrong or incomplete. Okay, Nicole. Where's Nicole?
Breakout rooms.
Yes, breakout rooms. So I don't really have a specific question, but just I want you all to discuss humility and how, you know, what possibilities it holds for being open to joy. Does that make any sense? Okay.
10 minutes.
Yeah.
All right, so everyone has to click on join the room. Hi, are you all here stuck, not in a room? Beth, Brian, Jean, Manuel? Or are we in a little room here? What, not joined. So Jean, you guys should click or unmute if you need help, but I'm assuming you're just kind of not around if I don't hear from you. Okay, Brian, no worries, no worries. Just hang out and just reflect on humility for yourself then. How about that? Hey, Ralph. Oh, you're muted now. You're muted. How are you?
Oh, I thought I was abandoned. I'm in a room with you guys.
Well, I mean, I'm not really in a room because I think all these others aren't really here or they don't have audio or something. So, yeah, so sorry about that.
All right. But that's all right. I was the only one in group 7, so I thought I'd come back to the main room, see what's going on, and there you are. Hi.
Okay, that's so funny. I mean, and so I'm, yeah, learning about all this anyway.
I
So,
know.
yes.
Me too. I as you know, I'm president of this nonprofit. We've been doing our Zoom meetings. We have over 50 people on our meeting, and talk about herding cats and having to learn how to manage this. It ain't easy,
Yeah, yeah. This
but it's really very productive and really great. So thank God for it.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I mean, I don't know how we would be able to survive without it.
Yeah. So how they did in 1917, so there's a way.
You what?
Well, they did so in 1917 somehow, so
Right.
there's always a way.
Yes, yes.
How are you?
I'm pretty good. You know, one day at a time.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. I don't know why I don't show up more, but well, actually, you know, it's that I'm involved in a lot of different things. Yesterday, I was in a new circle. They call the circle a Franciscan circle,
Mm-hmm.
and it was really great. I mean, and what's so interesting is the brother who hosts it is also a Buddhist, so he like combined the teachings of St. Francis with Buddhism, and I didn't know that at first at all. But it just kind of came out during his teaching, and it was really great. It's like a new circle. They call it a circle of friends, you know, and they're from all over, and mostly older, but it's really great. Really great. So, and then my other meetings, my professional meetings. So I'm involved in a lot. So when I say that I don't show up much, that's really not true. I show up in a lot of different places. What I was really saying is I miss our sangha.
I know.
Just being here brings.
Yeah, yeah. Hard. Well, I mean, and this is the thing, you know, you show up when you can, and when the time's right. I mean, I know we just do our best, right? It's and it is a lot, you know, even though things have definitely changed, like you said, you know, there are a lot of other Zoom meetings and activities going on, so you can only do so much, right?
Yeah. I just wanted to say parenthetically that Carly reached out to me a week or so ago, and seemed to be curious about meetings of some sort. I presume she meant recovery meetings of some sort, and
Yes.
the conversation didn't go much further. But I just want you to know that I'll be happy to support her and help her and share with her as much as I possibly can. I know she struggles horribly, and you know, it's really hard. It's so hard to navigate. You know, you probably see it pretty clearly. I see it pretty clearly in her where her trauma lies, where her pain lies, and I so identify with it, and I know that she can, and she's such a beautiful, warm soul, and I know that she can get through this. I know she can, and I know she wants to.
Yeah, and I feel like she is really trying. I mean, the most she ever really has, and
I know for me the hardest part is really becoming completely honest with myself, and really giving myself a shot. You know, I mean, it's really difficult. Our habits of mind are so ingrained.
yes,
And we fought so hard for those habits of mind to keep ourselves sane.
yes, yes. All right, Ralph, I got to close these rooms.
Okay.
People will be coming back in, but yeah, great to have you with us, and thanks for that. I appreciate it, Ralph.
My pleasure.
Everybody did okay with the breakout rooms?
I wasn't in a room. I was by myself.
So was I.
And I did put myself in the room. I did ended up that way, so I wasn't going to interrupt. And anyway.
Thanks, Peggy, because I do wonder, you know, like, I mean, I found myself in a little empty room with, because I don't really go in a room either. So yes, thanks for the feedback. Sometimes I don't know about the little room.
I guess I needed to be in an empty room.
No, no, no. So one of the things, did anybody hear anything that, well, first of all, before I say that, you know, we record these classes and they end up on YouTube. So if you have an objection to a class being up on YouTube, please let Nicole know as director, or write SPC or someone, so we can, you know, but be aware, you know, that, you know, I know we share things and, you know, it's not that like the world is watching, because they're not, you know, not like these are viewed a lot. You know, and we try to put the Discovering Buddhism classes up there so that people who miss classes can catch up, things like that. But if this is a horrifying thought to you, first of all, you can not have your face up there. But I'm always thinking that it's the speaker's view, but you know, I really don't know, because I don't watch them. So, but please do, you know, this is one of those new things of this new technology and these new circumstances that we don't have the hang up. So, you know, please give us feedback and recommendations or suggestions on how we can protect your whatever, if you feel that need, your privacy or your, you know, I don't know. But anyway, so, and this was true, of course, before Zoom, we would record classes. And of course, you could see the camera in the room, but, you know, we put them on YouTube. We don't put everything up there, but occasionally when, you know, they're put up there for interest. So, well, so does anybody have anything to share from their group that was, you know, just meaningful to them? Something that was helpful? Nothing at all.
Well, I was in a room by myself, so I got to talk to myself and reflect a moment. And what occurred to me was that this discussion about humility is something that I kind of wrestle with all the time in the form of my judgments, my criticisms, both of myself and others. And it seems to me like it's this ongoing battle between the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex, where I am constantly defending or in fear of, or I'm always in this mode of protecting myself in some way, shape, or form, whether it's consciously or unconsciously. And that seems to me to be like almost the root of the human condition to a large extent. And it's where I find my biggest dilemma is right there.
Well, I mean, in Buddhism, what would you think the response would be? You've studied a lot.
What would be the Buddhist response to that?
Yeah.
Wow, I don't know why I'm drawing a blank on this.
Somebody else say something?
I would say meditations on death.
That's what he
I'm
said.
sorry, I didn't catch.
Yeah, well, that could be one of the antidotes.
I think it's a great existential anxiety is the
Well, what would be the root of that in Buddhism?
attachment to.
No.
No.
No? Okay, I'm off base.
hindrance. We grasp at the self and feel the need to
Right.
protect the self-cherishing that arises from that grasping at the self, because we don't understand how we really exist. We really think that this is it. This little storyline, this particular, body is all there is to our existence. And we think if we can control, the safety of this body, protect this body, then we're going to be okay. Is it true? How can you truly protect this body? Like Howard Hughes tried to do it. How did he do it?
Well, he did it by hiding away.
Hiding
and
away.
trying-
So you just
Yeah,
make
but-
sure you don't get anybody else's diseases. You make sure that, nobody can attack you. You make sure. And what is that result?
You die anyways.
Well, you die anyway. Yeah, you can't prevent that. And guess what else you do? You die incredibly lonely. So you sacrifice probably the one thing you really want, which is this not feeling so vulnerable. And we think we can feel less vulnerable in a fortress. But actually, we feel a lot less vulnerable when we feel part of a community, when we accept our interdependence, the fact that we need others. So one of the things that comes up for humility, or what is considered one of the reasons we have trouble with being humble, is that it is an acknowledgement that we don't always know what to do. We are fearful, we're vulnerable, that we're dependent on others. That there's a part of us that fear that, that we don't want to admit to not be on top of it all the time. And so we pretend we are. And then that shuts people out. It shuts opportunities out to feel safe and supported, and but can we be physically safe? Is there such a thing? Is any one of us protected from dying today? No. And we need to realize that. So we need to go beyond our intellectual getting that to, like Anthony's suggesting, meditating on death and impermanence, of accepting that this idea we have of, yes, I'm going to die, but no, I'm not going to die in the next 5 minutes, is totally illogical. That in the fragility of the human body, and any body, look at, insects' bodies, everybody's body is vulnerable to ending in any moment. We are literally one in-breath away from death. So this need to protect ourselves, this all-important self, even on a physical level, is pointless. Now, when you look at relationship, all the things we might do in relationship to protect us from being hurt, what does the effect of that have?
Well, what you said a few minutes ago, being totally alone.
Yeah, we
Being in a-
cut
yeah.
people out. So the very thing we want, we're doing everything we can to, make sure we don't get it. I mean, that's not our intention. That's just how it works out. This is what the Buddha means when we said we just don't know what we're doing. that due to our ignorance, thinking that we really are self-sufficient, independent, beings somehow, inherently existent. That we haven't, that there's something fixed, concrete about ourselves and everybody else. And we're trying to depend on that which is impermanent. So recognizing that we are in fact vulnerable, fearful, but being open to the possibility that in this moment, the people who are around us may be able to offer something unexpected. This understanding that it is okay, in fact, better than okay, knowing that we're not in it alone. And that there's an opportunity to learn something, to be supported by someone, and have no idea who that might be or what might happen. But like most of us can think of times when we were in crisis, whether it's a flat tire on the side of the road, on a busy street, or some other much more meaningful kind of, moment where something happened that helped us. Somebody did something or something was available that we just, and all of a sudden we had all sorts of help. Most of us can, have real life examples of how, if we're open to our interdependence, our interconnectedness, if we're one of the people that sometimes helps someone else that we might not know well or not know at all or da 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 da.
I have a question.
Sure.
So the opposite of being humble, would that be like being a narcissist?
I don't know if that's, but it's arrogance.
Arrogance. And what if you're around somebody that you are on a regular, people in your life that are always, talking about themselves. They're constantly bringing the conversation back to themselves. They're know-it-alls. They're, and you have to.
What do you mean? What do you do with them?
You interact with them. They're part of your daily life. Somebody in your family
what kind
or
of
close
mindset
friend.
can help you with that?
That's what I'm asking you.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay. I'm gonna...
All right. So when someone's like that, what does that scream to you? How does that behavior inform us?
Sometimes I'm not sure. Sometimes I'm thinking it's a mental health issue.
Well, maybe, but
but sometimes it also is just.
Do you ever do it?
They have to prove. Yeah, I have. Yes.
Okay, what was happening for you when you had those kinds of moments?
I'm just trying to prove myself, boost myself up.
What do you think was underneath that?
Insecurity, maybe.
Right. Okay. So this is one of those things. You can use that knowledge about yourself, that sometimes you behave that way because of feeling insecure. And so how can you translate that into this situation with the people you have around you that behave that way?
Yeah, you can have compassion.
Totally. It's a sign of suffering.
Yeah.
That they feel the need to be in the center of the spotlight all the time or whatever. We know how that feels. To feel, like, hey, someone please pay attention to me. That there's some need underneath that is, it's not a real need. It's not like needing food, but it's this want, that, they're feeling unsafe because, and they're hoping that getting attention or being the center of attention will somehow make them feel better. It will not work, which is another reason why we can have compassion. Because they're using a tool that's not going to be effective. So being able to interact with them knowing that this is a suffering person who does not have the tools they need in order to perhaps get what they are looking for.
Maybe they just want to be heard. Like you can just say, like, I hear you. Maybe that would be helpful. Like, and then they'll calm down. Maybe they just feel they're not being heard.
Yeah, but we want to go from the assumption, because this is what the Buddha teaches us. We're all seeking happiness and don't want to suffer. And when we're misbehaving, it's a sure sign that we're expressing our suffering in some ineffective way. Like when we're angry, we're taking it out on everybody around us, or we're feeling insecure, we're lonely. I mean, I had to go to the dentist, a couple of times last week, and I noticed how chatty I was at the beginning, before they put things in your mouth and you can't chat at all, and I know it's just because, I'm lonely. I don't sound like I see anybody, ever. So, being in person with someone is like, oh, da-da-da-da-da-da. And I was really laughing at myself. I said, I'm sorry, you can tell I haven't seen anybody in a while. So, so we want to bring our hearts to everything. We want to recognize that people we think are difficult are having difficulties, and, open our heart to that. Doesn't mean we have to change our behavior necessarily, because, some people's, because they're using an ineffective tool, they're not likely to be filled, But if we can respond from an open, loving place, this acceptance that I hear you're suffering, without saying those words, they may feel heard. It may change the energy of those moments. And it can certainly make us less, when we finally have the chance to talk to someone else and we go, oh, you couldn't have believed so-and-so today. And then we're just creating the cause to meet them again, because then we're doing exactly what they're doing, only this time our partner's the recipient of our, you wouldn't believe what I had to put up with today. So it's really about the more we can, it's like when people ask, why would they do that? Or why, basically, this, you can just say, well, because they are ignorant, afflicted human beings. They don't know what they're doing. When someone asks me, why don't you take better care of, why don't you go get a massage or take, whatever, it's like, well, because I'm an afflicted human being. And, I keep grasping at my, habits that aren't helpful. The reality is we don't have to go too deep to know why we keep screwing things up or doing things that aren't very skillful or whatever. It's because we are ignorant and we keep holding on to our habits that we already have as the answer when they're not. So the more we can recognize this within ourselves and try to interrupt these unskillful habits and go, I know that doesn't work, so maybe I'll pause and do nothing, or pause and consider a different, point of view. So it's this, or recognize those moments when we just don't know what we're doing. We have no solution. We have no answer. And, and the more we can let go of trying to fix someone else. Yes, Robert or Veronica or Bianca.
That's me. I'm sorry. You were saying the other day, like when you see a snake and a coil, and you realize it's a rope. So when you're talking about recognize, so I've been thinking about that because the short time I was doing this was very informative and opened my mind to a lot of things. But then my little hiatus there, it's like I forgot everything. So it's like once you recognize, how can that be? How do you, when you say realize you're afflicted? I mean, I even forgot that. Like I was telling Nicole, I was like on a bicycle just thinking all day long, and I couldn't remember a thing. So once the truth becomes apparent, now how does it, I know there's
You
bad
have to make
habits.
it, you have to make it become habitual. We need, our habits push us forward, right? We just follow our habit energy, and so now we're trying to stop that and actually overcome it. That takes a lot of force. So we need to become habituated to what we now understand to be true, and we have to push back. We have to interrupt the habit. We have to try, but that energy is going to keep pushing us because of habituation. So when we say, oh, I just automatically get mad, or I automatically get impatient, or I automatically do this or that, try to imagine, the need to develop a new habit that's strong enough to get in the way of that habit. So we need to think about it. We need to remember the reasons why we don't want to keep going the same way. We need to remember, and we need to be kind to ourselves and gentle with ourselves and recognize it takes time. But keep reflecting. Taking vacations from the Dharma, you're not going to overcome your habits that way. So it's like, even on vacation, we want to meditate and reflect. It's this way of becoming so familiar with something. It's like the rope and the snake. If you're really afraid of snakes like I am, it is entirely possible that if I see that rope again, I will still mistake it for a snake. Because my fear of the snake is so much stronger than my wisdom of knowing it's a rope. So we have to keep practicing the wisdom so that it becomes as powerful and then more powerful than the ignorance. So understanding that impatience or pride or whatever our particular habit of affliction, because we do have tendencies to have a particular affliction more than others, or a few. And this is why we narrow them down to the root afflictions of the three poisons of, anger, attachment, and ignorance, or the 6 root afflictions where we throw in pride, and a couple of other things. So, we want to keep, developing that habit of, as soon as we realize we're going off in that habituated direction, to at least pause and go, oh, there I go again, so we get, we can really be familiar with our habits of thought and be aware of when they're happening, because that awareness is what will give us the opportunity to change it in the future, the more practiced we become. But we do have to be a bit determined. We have to, it's just knowing that, and if this, for certain things that are so ingrained, like self-protection, can be so ingrained, it can take quite a long time to remove the layers in which it influences our life. But the more we can look at things, not that they have a false appearance, read more physics, really understanding this idea that the way we see things and interpret things is not at all even how scientists would say things exist, So we want to keep, chipping away at some of our notions that's seen as believing that I'm right and I'm justified in feeling anger, whatever it is, so that we can undermine those habits with what, as a mature person who's, got some more knowledge, who's looking at it more carefully, can go, oh, but wait a minute, I know that's not correct. Being justified in being angry is no substitute for not being angry. Being angry is suffering. It feels miserable. I'd much rather resolve the injustice than stay angry if there is an injustice. But then other times, it's sort of like, oh, I'm angry because I feel entitled. So I don't think anybody should get in my way. So we have to really look and be with gentleness and humor, because we can be ridiculous most of the time. So, we just want to be able to look and go, oh, yes, that's not so brilliant. And be okay with that. We're not Buddhas. We're trying to learn how, so it's not, so of course we're doing things wrong. If we weren't doing things wrong, we'd always be happy. But we don't know what we're doing, and we have a lot of ignorance. And we grasp at things to be permanent that can't possibly be permanent. Not only do we die, our loved ones die. Everybody dies. Not only that, relationships change. Not only that, our jobs change. The way we have to experience our jobs change. Our travel changes. Who we can hang out with changes. Everything changes. And the more we can just kind of go, okay, well, my peace of mind doesn't have to depend on whether or not something doesn't change, or whether or not something does change. We don't have to keep grasping this better change, or grasping this better never change. We can go to that deeper place in our, the supportive place in our mind that is peaceful, that goes beyond the surface of panic and anger and, insecurity and whatever, all the different ways we suffer. And the unskillful tools we are trying to fix it with. And go back within and realize this moment is no big deal. There are millions of moments. To give us a little breathing space. And being able to be humble to not knowing what to do. Maybe the need to ask for help. Maybe to realize, oh, it's no big deal if this happens to me. Things happen to people all the time. That's part of the deal. Oh, we're coming to the end of time, not literally. So, any last burning questions before we say our prayer or announcements? Nicole, do we have any announcements?
Sure. We have a self-empathy nonviolent communication course coming up in September on Saturdays from 10:30 in the morning to noon. It's a 4-week course. Anyone's interested?
So self-empathy. And it's led by Stephanie somebody or other. What's her last name?
Bachman Matai. Or Matai.
Oh, no wonder I haven't tried to learn it. But Stephanie, she leads nonviolent communication workshops, which is a system developed by Marshall Rosenberg on how to help ourselves communicate things, from a place of empathy and compassion and, from within, so that we, and so a lot of us don't have self-empathy. We have more empathy for someone else, but this is an important thing. Learning how to be gentle with oneself, to accept our limitations, the fact that we're not Buddhas yet, that we're not, all these things is a really important skill in being able to be content and, and being able to support others, because when we don't support ourselves, we don't have a whole lot of energy to support others. So, and then we continue with, and in fact, I think we're starting with the section in the Bodhisattva's Way of Life on equalizing and exchanging self with other, which is one of the 2 techniques to develop bodhicitta, the wish to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. So it's a way to develop equanimity and compassion, great love, And then instead of, and then exchanging our sense of always self-cherishing to becoming other-cherishing. And then Thursday night is we continue with Samsara Nirvana, which is a class describing how we get stuck in cyclic existence and how we can reverse that. So check out the calendar. Anything else? And always, we really appreciate your kind support, your donations to keep this going. Unfortunately, requires funds. So we appreciate all the funds that people are able to give. So now we spend some time that the Buddha would certainly say is worthwhile. We're really trying to work with our minds and understanding the way we look at things can really impact on how we treat each other and how we treat ourselves. And so that, if we want more happiness in our life, more moments of joy in our life, that if we, this is how we do it. We start to look within. Joy is an inner state. It's not an external state. So we have to look within. So this is considered, a really smart move, to work on our minds and to keep looking and questioning and learning. So we want this benefit. So according to Buddhism, this places potentialities in our mind stream that will ripen in positive ways in the future as resources or pleasant experiences and all this. So we want to share this with all others until there are no suffering sentient beings, ourselves included, stuck in samsara. So I'll share the prayer book. Let me get to the page. So really rejoice for a moment in your participation this morning, your efforts. May all beings everywhere, plagued by sufferings of body and mind, obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored and finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness, and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid. May those bound be freed. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. So thank you very, very much. Please open your mics and say hello and goodbye to folks. It's good to see everyone.